don't organizations and groups of people come up with their own morality and a consensus on morality just fine without a sort of a religious doctrine or connection to religion?
All right, well, let's shift a little bit to religion, because you said something to me interesting the other day about your faith. You were asking about what the show's about, and there was a little bit of concern that you didn't want to get into a debate or anything like that. And I assured you that's not what this show's about. It's just to draw out people's perspectives. But you say something very interesting to me. You said, I'm not as militantly agnostic as I used to be. What does it mean to be a militant agnostic?
Well, I actually
I will prove to you that there's no way you can know if God exists. If not, I will burn you at the stake. What is a militant agnostic?
I would say, I think I said agnostic because I'm more careful throwing around the word atheist, because I think it's so pejorative, and people, when you say atheist, people have it has negative connotations. And agnostic means something different. I'm not saying that they mean the same thing. They do not. And I think agnostic probably is more in line with what I am, but I wouldn't shy away from being called an atheist either. Militant, yeah. I mean, there was a time when I would call myself basically a militant atheist. Not that there's any militancy to it, but more than like unapologetic, I guess. Mm-hmm. Which I always felt that, listen, people who have a faith and a church mm-hmm. are absolutely unapologetic and should be. Not all people are very quiet and personal about it, and some
now more than ever.
Yeah. Now more than ever are what?
Well, even from a faith perspective, people don't really. I mean, depending on where you live in the country,
yeah.
But at least in the Northeast where we live, there's almost a shying away from even acknowledging that one has any belief whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would agree. I mean, when we were growing up, I mean, it was much more common to, the assumption people would talk about going to church, and it was talked about regularly, and it's not. You're right. It's not. It certainly changed. But there are a lot of people who feel free to be, as they should, unapologetic about their view, and that's and I'm not saying they are doing it in a rude way or something that impinges or infringes on other people's views. They're just, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
This is my truth. Like, and these are the reasons why, and that's kind of what I felt. Why should I shy away from that? But
no, I think that's right. I would agree that you shouldn't. If one doesn't believe in God, or isn't sure, is more on the atheistic spectrum, or is an Eastern faith, whatever it may be, there should be space created for someone to be able to publicly state that if they want to.
Yeah, and I still think, and by the way, I've tempered sort of my views on it, and I kind of come to the conclusion that, well, I can't possibly know the answer, so maybe I shouldn't be so loud about it. But I've come to the atheists still really. I mean, there's not much of a, and you may disagree, there's not much of a forum for people who identify as believing that God does not exist.
Oh, I think there is.
Yeah, and not in politics, I would say. You won't find one person really who's, and I guarantee you there are senators in Congress, people who are absolutely atheists. Absolutely.
But can't say
but you will not find one that has not listed what religion they practice.
But they haven't, because they haven't gotten voted in. They wouldn't get voted in if they
right.
publicly espoused atheistic ideas. Yeah.
There's no benefit to saying you're an atheist if you're a politician, and there certainly is a disadvantage. So it's probably just that in itself.
I think maybe in the world of Hollywood, or the world of, I mean, the intellectual world, the academic world, there's plenty of space for atheism.
Yes. Yeah. See the circles that you're in, like, I'm
I'm not in
But
political circles.
no, no, that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
academic circles, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Although your academic circles probably tend less towards atheism, but uh,
Hmm.
yeah, no, I know like some of your education. I'm sure you the people absolutely that viewpoint is part of it, and
But
essential in some sense.
well,
Like
I'd say the most common viewpoint in my world, and not
yeah,
just my psychological professional world.
mm,
Well, the most narrow, like my actual being Catholic, like we're all believers, but then you
mm,
extend it beyond to the world of psychology, and then I would argue even beyond that to the larger, at least cultural landscape in the Northeast. You get I'm spiritual but not religious. It's like I
yeah,
believe in something transcendent. There's something more here than just me. I can't exactly describe what it
yeah.
is, but I'm sure it's real. But no institutional norms or morality of telling me what
I
to
was
do.
it always
That is
so
the most common view.
I've always felt when people said that it was a little bit of a cop out. But that's not fair to say for everybody. But I feel like every girl I dated before I got married
Spiritual
was
but not
spiritual but
religious.
not religious. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you
Well, the
express your
problem is
yeah?
religion. The religion. I mean, the problem is that it's not a problem, but the reality is that religion makes demands on you.
Hmm.
If you're going to subscribe to a faith, you're going to believe that, at least a Christian faith. Well, I mean,
That's one thing I did. Yeah.
faith is a broad word, but if you're going to subscribe to a Christian faith, you do believe that God revealed himself to you from outside of space and time, and in some ways gives you a system of morality which determines what is good for you.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
like the best version of morality. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of interpretations of that. It'd be, oh, this is the church telling me I don't want to enjoy my life and its repression, all this stuff.
What do you mean
But
it's
I
the
mean,
best version of morality?
by the
It's like the purest.
no, by the best, I
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
like if you think of, okay, so I have a 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Are there moral? If you take more like, okay, say we do have morality. Say call it morality. You can substitute that word semantically for something else, but
Mm,
there are rules in the house. There's parenting.
yeah.
And if I tell my kid don't touch the hot stove,
Mm,
am I telling him don't touch the hot stove because don't want him to have fun by touching the glowy orange,
yeah.
warm, inviting experience? No, of course not. The rule, the prescription, the limitation, the boundary is because if he touches the stove, he's going to harm himself. It's
Hmm.
out of love that moral system
Yeah.
expressed through parenting is given to him. And a
Yeah.
proper view of religion, that's how one would view morality. Now,
Yeah.
outside of the system, there's a lot of different interpretations of what that is. But within the system, you believe a Christian worldview is that God is a father to you. He
Yep.
loves you. And if he tells you don't murder someone, or if he tells you, I mean, name it, there are many moral prescriptions, but that is because that is harmful for you. Out of love for you, he tells you do this or don't do that. It's always not always in the negative. There's the positive side of things too.
It's the
It's a,
same reason that parents teach you things, right? I mean, it's the
exactly.
yeah,
So
and
that's what I mean by
yeah,
a best interpretation of morality.
yeah. But then doesn't it might not lead to it, and we're going to go down the road of like starting to debate. And I didn't want to have a debate, but I
I
think it's
know.
just as long as there's
I'm
discussion.
just
No,
discussing. Please.
just yeah. Does it might it what would the downsides of that be that it leads to lack of sort of interrogation of your own morality because where does it come from? What is the cost and benefit to it? Because if it is prescribed by God, it don't matter what the cost and benefit is. That's morality. That is right and this is wrong. Um, and with something like killing people, we don't hopefully have to have much of a debate on it. But there are things I think that can be represented as a question of morality that are could are not moral in some sense, and if you believe it comes from God Himself, you're not going to question it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd say two things about that. It's a really good point, and I think
thank you.
what you're um I guess pointing toward is an essential part of anyone's spiritual development. So
Yeah,
you cannot just, first of all, people learn faith typically from their parents. You
hmm
cannot just accept the religion or the faith of your parents.
hmm
You have to make it your own. You have to
yeah,
question it. You
yeah,
have to delve into it and make sure that it makes sense for you in your life. Or
yeah,
otherwise, you're basically just, it's an unexamined life,
yeah, yeah.
and that's
All right.
very unhealthy. I mean, even in my own spiritual conversion, probably my mid 20s, I had to go through a lot of what I believed, and some of the things. that I had learned from my parents, I had to
Yeah.
throw out because actually
Yeah.
it wasn't the most consistent with the Catholic teaching, but it was filtered through my parents' perspective. So I
Yep.
think even in a religious context, you do have to make your faith your own. That's so full stop. So I agree with you there. On the other part, I mean, if you believe, I mean, now we can start to get into philosophy and things here. I mean, if you believe that it's from God, you have to believe that it is actually he has given you the actual, if he's a good and loving God, he has given
Hmm.
you the actual standard for what is right and wrong, what is good and evil, right?
Yes. Right.
If you believe he's God.
Right.
So then it becomes a question of, well, actually, that doesn't resonate in my experience, which I think is what you're
Mhm.
pointing to. As
Yeah.
there's times when something that is a moral prescription, um, when that moral prescription does resonate with what I believe to be true, right, and good.
Yep.
In my worldview, and this comes from Saint John Paul II, his philosophy, which is called personalism, which is this both and of maintaining two philosophies into one. One would be like phenomenology. I don't know if you know about what
Hmm.
phenomenology is. It's the experiential philosophy,
Hmm.
and on its own, basically, it's a branch of existentialism, which is I get to determine morality. I get to paint my own reality on this open ended canvas. My experiences, all that matters,
Yep.
and there is a value in that. But also, it needs to be weighed against Thomism, like the Thomas Aquinas,
But
the
yeah.
teachings, the
So
prescriptions.
a lot of Germans in what's that? How do you pronounce the phenomena?
Phenomenology.
Yeah.
Max Shaler,
Yeah.
I believe, was
Yeah.
German. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, the idea is in a Catholic worldview, you do enter into someone's experience. It
Hmm.
may be that it's not resonating with the teachings of the church,
Hmm.
but it's to help someone realize that the reasons for that is because it's filtered through my own hurts and my own wounds and my own psychology.
Hmm.
And ultimately, if you believe it's God, he's God, somehow I need to get to the point where my worldview aligns with what the church
Yeah.
as a mouthpiece for God is teaching.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think this is. I don't even want to make the point because it's like the most overdone sort of debate is. But I am interested in your viewpoint because um, it is one that I never heard a really good answer for, which is don't organizations and groups of people come up with their own morality and a consensus on morality just fine um, without a sort of a religious doctrine or connection to religion. Is there any case where um, like a group of people came up with something that wouldn't be
The
connected
Greeks,
to like
maybe.
a universal reality,
Well,
morality.
I
But,
think the
but
Greeks I think the Greeks introduced the idea of virtue development. It
yeah,
wasn't heightened to the level
yeah,
of religion, but
yeah,
Aristotelian philosophy, upon which Thomas Aquinas built,
mm-hmm.
was the closest thing to a secular system of morality that governed
Hmm.
society well. I
Yep,
think what you often find nowadays is are programs like that, but then you have to judge them by their fruit. You have
yeah,
to judge that system of morality that was generated by a secular program by its fruit, and whether or not that's actually leading people to happiness, or is it leading people to loneliness, as your brother pointed out.
yeah, yeah. But I would say that America is not so much as Norway or something, a fairly secular place in a lot of ways, and
Yes,
it has been, and early on. I mean, the founding fathers intentionally spoke about both sides, and intentionally found ways to divorce things that they're talking about
they were
from religion.
deists. They were deists.
They absolutely were, but they were questioning in themselves at that time
Yes,
what they believed, and so it's the morality of the Bill of Rights doesn't come. I mean, there's obviously threads through it, but it doesn't come so much from religion.
no,
But they came up with a
it's built on
yeah,
natural law.
yeah, right, yeah, absolutely. Um, and so I guess the question is like, you don't need religion, right, to come up with with a sense of morality, or for a person to feel like they had to adhere to a moral code. I wouldn't think because
For the purposes of law,
well, not for the purpose for the purposes of a society functioning in a healthy
of
way.
living well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because my worry about that, without any kind of without any sense of some kind of transcendent dimension to a body of knowledge which governs behavior, there is the temptation to just serve the self over serving others, and that leads to like a denigration of functioning.
Yeah, I see that. Like, I would agree with that. I would logically agree with that. But I think that it also leads to a denigration of social standing and relationships, and there are costs to it, that I think would reinforce that you wouldn't want to do that. I would, the people who are, you know, broken in their own way, or just so don't give a crap that they're just going to do what they want to do, they weren't going to listen to God either. Like,
No.
they weren't going to, they were going to do their own thing anyway.
Like a hedonistic worldview, like whatever feels good, do it.
Exactly.
I think a lot of American culture nowadays is built on a hedonistic worldview, which sooner or later, I mean, it just doesn't work. Like, we all know that you have to operate outside of your emotional life to do what is true, right, and good in order to function.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to agree. There's actually, my brother feels like, and I feel like there's a bit of a new alignment coming, maybe, on some things that we're kind of intellectually and morally bankrupt in a way. Like, we don't have much to say, at least from a leadership position, on it anymore, and speak from authority. And one of the areas where the biggest area where Democrats and Republicans are coming together is on the very uncomfortable place which big technology plays in our daily life.
I mean, social media and AI and all that.
Social media, AI, yeah, all of that, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, without religious values informing our decisions about AI.
Oh yeah, it's scary.
It's terrifying.
It is terrifying. I don't know where it leads, but when the smartest guys around who are making tons of money off this stuff, and are going to make tons of money off it, say, "Hey guys, this is going to destroy all of us. You should probably listen."
Or they say it might destroy all of us,
yeah.
But it's worth it for the sake of science. It's like Oppenheimer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh God.
I mean, I do have faith in the fact that we created some terrible weapons of mass destruction, and World War III hasn't happened yet. There has been some level of restraint. The frightening thing about AI is that we could lose control.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. But the reason there isn't World War III is because more than one country got them. Once more than one country got them, you can't use them for nuclear weapons, right?
All it takes is one psychopath in power.
Right. Yes, that is true. But I would say that, with a few exceptions, the kind of countries that have been able to put the resources and discipline behind developing something like that have a robust enough sort of society and institutions that psychopaths don't regularly
get to the
power.
top.
Yeah, it's not that they can't. Yeah, regularly. It's not that
we do have evidence of it happening historically.
Yes,
but it's not the most common.
Yes. It's not the most common thing.
And what you find is people rallying against that person.
Yeah,
if they do rise to power.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.